So the new Spider-Man movie's pretty good, huh? Yeah, I know, the first new episode back after a bit is supposed to address things and have some kind of more profound introduction, especially since we're all once again mired in this pandemic shit. And honestly, part of the reason you got a flashback episode 2 weeks ago about the amazing movies instead of this then was because I realized I was just rehashing things I said before and was better off actually just reposting than repeating and rephrasing myself. And by the way, yes, I heard you. I will not do the voiceover thing for reposting written articles again. Thought that would be the proper way to do that. Guess not. Message received. Sorry.
Worst episode ever.
But like when I sat down to write this new version, the okay, where have we been, where do we go now introduction part of this just kept coming out so angry. I didn't want to do it. And I mean, it's been hard, right? Am I allowed to just say it's been hard? Rhetorical question. I realize it's my own goddamn show. I can say whatever I want. Rubber baby buggy bumpers. Whatever. What I mean is it's been really hard these last 2 years. And even though thankfully I've never got COVID, I didn't lose anyone in my immediate family or circle of friends to COVID. The pandemic caused significant and probably long-term damage and delay to my professional plans, work life. I'll be recovering and rebuilding from for a while, but that's nothing compared to what so many other people have been dealing with. And I honestly feel guilty feeling anything other than grateful that we got the fucking Nazis out of the White House and I didn't die during this whole disaster. Yes, definitely, but it's still been hard, right? I mean, I can't be the only person who feels like sometimes it's just a hard push-pull between get back into your normal healthy routine and does getting back into what was your normal healthy routine mean accepting that you lost multiple years of planned personal progress and who knows how much momentum because the whole world decided to go to shit all around you?
This is really crazy and inaccessible and maybe too dark. Maybe to them, but not to us. Cool. Cool. Hot. Hot.
I mean, again, I feel like an ungrateful, narcissistic, oh, poor me asshole having any kind of resentment while being lucky enough to be drawing breath in 2022, but for fuck's sake, I had real things in motion before all this went to hell, and then, oops, sorry, back in 2015, these lovely people were feeling economic anxiety, and surprisingly short number of dominoes later, we're all living through the stupider version of a Resident Evil prologue, and I don't know how to be anything other than sad and angry about it all still, and because I haven't been able to get the things that had to be placed on hold going again in a meaningful way, I don't know when I'll be able to promise anything about content other than we are still trying to get more of it produced and back running. It still is hard, and I am trying to be less consistently depressing about it though, because for one thing, yeah, I'd like to see the Patreon numbers start climbing again, so stay tuned and we're trying. But yeah, anyway, the new Spider-Man movie is pretty good, huh? I mean, I only gave it a 7 out of 10, I know. I felt like that was what it deserved, fairly, because it's not a masterpiece. I actually think it's a little on the long side. Act 2 is a little draggy. I also appreciated all the fan service and callbacks, but I'm a grown-up, so I can recognize the difference between my nostalgia nerve being prodded and actual good storytelling.
Nostalgia is bullshit. It is a brain worm that makes adults regress into children who argue about Ghostbusters while the world fucking burns.
Hey, don't say things about Ghostbusters you can't take back.
And again, for the most part, it's a damn good example of the form, so there's a lot of both to go around in it, but folks, please, having stuff from Spider-Man 1 and 2 does not make it an equal to Spider-Man 1 and 2, and it's not. It's good, I liked it a lot, it's far and away the best of the 3 solo MCU Spider-Man movies, it's the best not animated Spider-Man movie since Part 2, it really nails the stuff it needs to nail, but this thing right now about, hey, it should be nominated for the Oscars, I mean, okay, in the sense that a lot of just okay to pretty good movies get nominated for Best Picture, and a few kinda not good movies have won Best Picture even, sure, I guess, but we're really gonna go to the mat this time and try to act like we weren't all just massively overinflating our reaction to this because it was the first thing everyone went back into theaters to watch collectively in what we're now calling post-COVID, whether or not it is, and we're all just glad to have seen a movie again. Look, I'm Mr. The Academy needs to recognize popular cinema and there's no reason to stigmatize genre films or blockbusters, but the 2 times recently that a superhero movie could be legitimately in the running for Best Picture were The Dark Knight and Black Panther, respectively. Maybe you could make the, wow, good job pulling that off long-term argument for Avengers Endgame in addition to those, but No Way Home is a very good, maybe even in the context of its moment and franchise, great MCU entry, but Best Picture, even in an anemic year like this, I could maybe be in favor of it as a symbolic nominee, sure, but that's about it. I mean, it wouldn't upset me to see it nominated. Hell, if a few more film snobs get upset about it, I'll even root for it. But seeing the concept get this much traffic kind of baffles me, to be honest.
Marge, I'm confused.
Now, that being said, it doesn't baffle me half as much as seeing the so-called reappraisal happening for the amazing Spider-Man movies following Andrew Garfield turning up for his bit in the movie. I mean, I understand people generally felt that he caught a bad break there, which I can more or less agree with. He was a young actor, it wasn't totally his fault, he was working with what they gave him, etc. But No Way Home had barely been out for a day, and I was already seeing people clamoring for Sony to somehow restart the series on his side and finish out that story, or have his version of Spider-Man be the one that turns up in Venom or Morbius, and get him and Emma Stone back somehow to have her Gwen Stacy resurrected as the live-action Spider-Gwen or Ghost Spider or whatever. And guys,
What is wrong with you people?
I'm sorry, I just don't know how else to express that sentiment. There's no sense to be made there, none, and I'm not sure it had crystallized for me just how profoundly this whole sensibility and moment had been bugging me until I saw the stuff bubble up about Ben Affleck, Michael Keaton, and Batman now at the same time. For those of you who are so lucky to not do this for a living or otherwise don't have to care about these things until they start to advertise them at least, this isn't, as far as anyone knows, about The Batman, the movie with Robert Pattinson, which I also think looks kind of, I've seen this before, as these things go, but at least in a straightforward way because they're keeping it separate from everything else. This is about the ongoing DC Extended Universe movies, i.e. the sort of continuum of films and series branching off from the failed Justice League movies that were supposed to have been reshuffled through some kind of soft reboot by now, but hasn't because of the pandemic delays and Warner Brothers merging with AT&T and then that falling apart, and now who even knows? Just a horrible ongoing train wreck disaster of a thing.
Please disperse! Nothing to see here!
That supposedly still, as I will remind you, I was one of the first to predict would be what had ended up happening 4 fucking years ago, on track to get an attempted fix from a time travel continuity management bullshit set to go down in the long in development Flash movie, which we've known about for a while now was going to use the Back to the Future 2 but with superheroes and the grandfather paradox plot of the Flashpoint miniseries as a mega handwave to give the studio a do-over on all the things they feel they'd screwed up or audiences hated or actors wanted to move on from in the current DCEU, a list which has now only gotten longer after more bad movies, box office disappointments, pandemic delays, and systemic corporate failures that at this point looks very likely that the incoming When the Dust Settles plan is aiming at some radical shit.
People want cuddles.
Including Ben Affleck and Henry Cavill being out as Batman and Superman, Justice League and its adjacent features either wiped from continuity or moved on from entirely, and while Robert Pattinson's Batman in the real world but without other super people stuff movies get to keep on and be their own separate thing, Affleck's Batman gets replaced in the DCEU timeline by Michael Keaton, the 1989 to 1992 Batman, apparently coming back first in Flashpoint and then permanently to play an older mentor figure in the vein of Batman Beyond to the already announced Batgirl as the new face of the franchise going forward, possibly as complement to the new Supergirl also debuting in that same movie, the internet's reaction to which has been about what you'd expect.
It's a caped crusader like you've never seen before.
Awesome sauce! Oh, and here comes Batman!
And this time, he's a girl. Yes, it's the all-new Batgirl show.
Batgirl? It's her show? But I want the moody loner Batman!
Now, I'm planning to do a whole other show on the implications of all that because it's complicated, lots of different angles there. Suffice to say that people losing their minds because the characters are women or because the terrible Snyderverse movies aren't getting more installments or idiots being idiotic. But yeah, a lot of other stuff, but specifically for my purposes here, to the people who are furious that Ben Affleck doesn't want to be Batman anymore, who are petitioning Warner Brothers trying to make him be Batman again, who are all geared up to torment not only the wonderful human Michael Keaton, but also this, by all accounts, perfectly nice-seeming young woman who is clearly very excited to be playing Batgirl because you think it will cause Affleck to be Batman again. Why will you not let this poor man just not play fucking Batman? He says he doesn't want to do it. He's told you many times now, both through the defeated-looking interviews he was giving during and after the productions, and in the honestly not good performance in the films, that he's just not into this. It turned out to be a bad idea. He's saying openly he had a bad time. I mean, I get that you might disagree, but at a certain point this becomes weird, sad, and a little bit or a lot scary and possessive.
As a loyal viewer, I feel they owe me.
What?
He says he doesn't want to do it, despite the attempts to make it all about a director versus director thing in the press, and to be clear, Joss Whedon can go to hell. It was clearly the overall situation. He's gone right back into making the kind of movies he's always been better at, and has apparently pulled off the rare midlife crisis boomerang all the way back around to Ben Affleck, which, good for him, honestly, seems happy, hope for the best. And guys, you've had so many Batmans. They've got a whole other actor playing Batman right now. They're doing another animated Batman. They're making the guy who was Batman in the 90s, who was now in his 70s, be Batman again, just to give you a nostalgia erection.
Everything I loved as a kid and hated as a teenager, I love as an adult.
And I'm sure he won't be the only other Batman in Flashpoint, because after No Way Home and Multiverse of Madness, every fucking franchise is going to do this now until we get sick of it. But seriously, it's bad enough we can't let anyone in this industry just not have a superhero role on their CV. We can't just allow this one man to say, hey, I tried being Batman, I don't want to do it anymore.
So, this is really it.
Yeah, looks like. At least you can say you had a good run.
A great run.
Now, the thing with Garfield, okay, that's more complicated because it doesn't seem as clear whether he actually wants to do it. Clearly, those movies were as miserable an experience to make as they were to watch, maybe more so. But he's also got big theater kid energy, and he hasn't grabbed a franchise role to replace it with yet, even though you gotta figure he's the second phone call for everything the Chalamet kid says no to, right? And the fact that he's not a hard no when people ask him now, yeah, that does make me think that not only are Sony and Pascal Pictures exactly desperate and short-sighted enough to keep diluting their own half of the brand by cramming him into Venom 3 or Morbius or Kraven if they actually end up making that.
I have nothing left except Spider-Man.
I bet they've at least already talked to him about it, and even though there's zero chance of any of those not being terrible, he'd be stupid not to take their money, and they're going to offer him a lot of it. And you know, if it's something he wants to do, fine. If people really want to see him do it or feel they missed out on a hypothetical better movie in that version of the franchise, I mean, I don't see how that could be possible, but okay, feel how you feel. But I've never been able to wrap my head around this faux sense of righteous anger that there was some huge miscarriage of justice that this one actor was in a pair of movies that got poorly reviewed because they weren't very good, the movies, I mean. It's not like people were blaming him for the amazing duology failing. It didn't seem to damage his career credibility. The whole time that horror show was playing out, he was working with acclaimed filmmakers like Scorsese, doing awards-caliber movies like Silence and Hacksaw Ridge. He's been near universally praised as one of the great young stars of his generation, even with having headlined 2 giant bombs and almost torpedoed a franchise on his resume. That doesn't exactly almost happen. He's even earning rave reviews for his turn as Jonathan Larson in Tick, Tick, Boom this year, and that's long after even the theater community kind of soured on Rent as a pop culture artifact, so you know they actually mean it. He's doing fine, basically, as far as I can see, and it never seemed like this grave injustice that he was having to go through life with the stigma of being told, oh no, the person who played Spider-Man second wasn't as good as the person who played Spider-Man first.
How do you sleep at night?
On top of a pile of money with many beautiful ladies.
Just asking.
Look, as someone who is now approaching middle age and seeing firsthand how tough it can be to stretch when pop culture gets a certain idea about who you were supposed to have been, even with a very, very minor level of notoriety, maybe I've got a different context here, but I think about how deleterious not being allowed to move on from a part like this apparently was for people like George Reeves back in the day, or how a lot of the Star Trek actors famously got trapped doing only that, whether they wanted to or not, and whether they were okay making a living on the autograph circuit or not, and the visceral level of entitlement involved here when this stuff isn't good and didn't work in the first place just speaks to a really dark impulse from where I'm sitting, you know? If they want to be done, let them be done. Let things that didn't work not have worked, and let people try other stuff. Yes, even if you're sure it could have worked if only they'd listened to you. Especially since they're not gonna listen to you now anyway. I'm Bob, and that's The Big Picture.